faithfully delivering value, exploring great books worldwide.
Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk.
Today, we're diving into a book called Alive, Homecoming. The subtitle is A Personal Account of the Bataan Death March. Bataan Peninsula is located in the southwest of Luzon Island in the Philippines. During World War II, Japan attacked the Philippines to win in the Pacific. U.S. Filipino forces fought hard for 3 months from Bataan, but surrendered when cut off, letting Japan take over.
Then, to move forward with their plans, Japan had to relocate the surrendered troops and civilians fast, sparking the infamous Bataan Death March.
On April 7, 1942, over 70,000 American and Filipino prisoner of wars forced by the Japanese to march 120 kilometers to a camp. They faced blazing sun, extreme heat, no food or water, plus abuse and killings. In that 6-day death march, about 15,000 people died on the way. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East grouped it with the Nanjing Massacre and Burma Thailand Death Railway as Japan's top 3 war atrocities. The book's author, Lester Tenney, witnessed this horror firsthand. Tenney was an American soldier in the Philippines' defense. After capture, he survived the Bataan Death March, was shuffled through multiple POW camps in the Philippines, and ended up in Omuda, Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan. He labored as a slave in a coal mine. Over 3 years and 8 months of brutal captivity, he endured inhuman treatment and saw savage killings. But the suffering didn't break him. Using his guts and smarts, he fought to survive that hell, and Tenney made it out of the camp alive. With sheer will, he overcame the war's shadow, got a PhD from Arizona State University, and became their finance professor. He spent 50 years using diaries he secretly wrote in camp and gathering raw materials from comrades to finish this 300,000-word account of his POW life. The book traces his journey step by step, from Bataan's fall in the Philippines fight to his time in POW camps. It tells America and the world about Japan's brutal war crimes during that time, breaking international laws.
Published in 1995, the book sparked a huge reaction in American society.
Kirkus Reviews, an authoritative American book review magazine, believes that Tenney tells the legend of a hero miraculously surviving hell. American historian Stephen Ambrose praised it as an outstanding work where virtue triumphs over evil, and the great humanity shown in adversity is worth savoring. Next, I'll guide you through Tenney's hellish journey in 3 stages, experiencing his suffering and resilience firsthand. Yesterday, Stage 1, the fall of Bataan and the Death March. At 3 a.m. on December 8, 1941, Manila time, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, igniting the Pacific War. 9 hours later, Japan bombed the Philippines, destroying U.S. air bases there. The Philippines was a strategic hub in the Southwest Pacific and a U.S. colony. After War II began, the U.S. froze Japanese assets and embargoed oil. To secure resources, Japan aimed to occupy mineral-rich colonies like the Philippines. In late December that year, Lieutenant General Masaharu Homma, commander of the Philippine campaign, ordered Japanese troops to land at Lingayen Gulf on Luzon's west coast, planning to conquer the Philippines in 50 days. And now I say, because the U.S. had planned to focus its main forces in Europe and stay defensive in the Philippines. Since Japan's attack began, the U.S. Filipino forces had been making tactical retreats. By mid-January 1942, the Allied forces retreated to the Bataan Peninsula, engaging in a 3-month standoff with the Japanese. Bataan Peninsula had rugged terrain with steep canyons, hills, and mountains. It was humid, sweltering, thick with vegetation, crawling with venomous insects, and malaria spread through the troops by late March. In the U.S. Filipino forces, 1,000 men fell daily from malaria. Rationed food and canned meat were long gone, so soldiers had to forage locally. After finishing water buffalo, mangoes, and bananas, they ate grass, leaves, and hunted wild boars, lizards, and giant pythons. By April, Of the 100,000 U.S. Filipino troops, 5,000 to 18,000 survived, and 75% to 80% had one or more diseases, severely damaging health, leaving no strength to fight or even run. To save the remaining wounded and civilians on Bataan, on April 9th, General Edward King, commander of the defenders, led the troops in surrendering to Japan. At this time, there were still strong American defense fortifications on Corregidor Island, south of the Bataan Peninsula. The Japanese needed to quickly transfer the surrendered prisoners from Bataan Peninsula to the O'Donnell POW camp, 120 kilometers away, to launch an all-out attack on Corregidor. There were 77,000 surrendered prisoners, including 65,000 Filipino troops and 12,000 American soldiers. Additionally, there were nearly 30,000 Filipino civilians, and the book's author, Tenny, was among the surrendered prisoners. Born in Philadelphia in 1919, at age 21 in 1940, Tenny enlisted in the Army. The next year, his unit was deployed overseas for combat. Tenny bid farewell to his newlywed wife Laura and came to the Philippines. And, in the view of Tenny and his American comrades, surrender was better than death. Surrender was merely seen as a misfortune in war. According to international laws of war, soldiers who have fulfilled their duty by laying down arms should receive respect and protection. But the Japanese viewed surrender as shameful. They firmly believed it was better to die than surrender. Surrenderers were seen as cowards and could be abused and tormented at will. Since the Japanese needed to drive prisoners out quickly, but the surrendered exceeded the estimated 30,000, logistics couldn't keep up and there weren't enough trucks. Therefore, Japanese High Command ordered that any American POW who couldn't walk to the camp must be executed over 200 meters from land during the march. This order effectively condoned and even encouraged the various atrocities by the Japanese afterwards. On April 10, 1942, the march began. Vehicles were far from sufficient, with most prisoners marching 4 in a row, 10 in a column. Every day, they marched non-stop from 6:30 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m., only resting a few minutes when guards changed shifts. The road from Bataan to O'Donnell camp was terrible. War-damaged, potholed, covered in sharp sand and gravel, with large rocks everywhere, making walks torturous. Weather was harsh, scorching sun at noon with high ground heat, plus sudden downpours and dust storms. Moreover, the prior 3 months of hunger and disease had already weakened most soldiers. Soldiers in their 20s moved with the feeble steps and gaunt appearance of 80-year-olds, shuffling breathlessly, with skin hanging loose on bones. But no matter how weak, they couldn't stop. Stopping meant death on the march.
On day 1, Tenny's friend Hank stumbled and fell into roadside bushes. Tenny and comrades yelled, "Get up! Hurry!" But it was too late. A Japanese soldier shouted and drove his bayonet into Hank's chest.
After 5 or 6 stabs, Hank struggled up and staggered into line, blood soaking his shirt. He didn't last long, collapsed from blood loss, and was shot dead. Though Japan won at Bataan, they deployed 40,000 plus troops, with over half casualties. Many Japanese lost friends, so they seized every chance to abuse POWs. Torture and killing became routine. And Japanese guards forbade POWs from carrying water or drinking from springs and artesian wells. By day 3, without water, Tenny's throat burned, and his limbs refused to obey. Spotting an artesian well, Tenny sneaked to drink while guards weren't watching. More prisoners joined, drawing the guards' attention.
A guard stabbed one prisoner to death, blood staining the well.
All prisoners, including Tenny, froze in terror before scrambling back into line.
Tenny felt utterly powerless. Another innocent young life wasted.
Where was God in that moment? 2 hours later, the column passed a water buffalo pond covered in green foam, clearly filthy.
Prisoners didn't care. With guards' permission, dozens frantically rushed to drink.
After they returned, a Japanese officer, ordered those with wet clothes to line up, then commanded machine gun fire.
He forced other POWs to watch, warning that any resistance meant instant execution.
Sneaking off to drink meant death. Getting permission to drink also meant death. Often, even doing nothing meant death. Japanese soldiers held long ropes, whipping prisoners from time to time. Some would lasso captives' necks and drag them on the ground until they were cut bloody and bruised by sharp rocks. While a Japanese officer on horseback casually swung his samurai sword as he passed the column. He swung at Tenny, who was on the outer edge of the line. Luckily, Tenny dodged fast, leaving only a deep wound on his left shoulder that caused heavy bleeding. Two of Tenny's friends found a medic in the marching line to stitch his wound and supported him for 3 kilometers to keep him from falling behind and being killed. The Japanese military also enjoyed beheading. Officers would demonstrate their expert decapitation skills to prisoners.
How to make a prisoner's head separate cleanly from their body.
While torturing and killing American POWs, Japanese soldiers forced passing Filipino civilians, men, women, and kids, to watch the shocking scenes. The Filipinos stared dumbfounded, silently praying with tears. The Japanese soldiers' slaughter of unarmed innocents repeatedly challenged Tenny's faith. Tenny asked himself, "Am I just waiting to be slaughtered? How much longer can I endure such atrocities?" After despair peaked, Tenny found he could overcome it, and his will to survive grew stronger. He wanted to live, to return home to his beloved family and wife.
To do this, he set principles. First, keep a positive attitude and set some goals.
No matter how tough the march, Tenny insisted on setting a goal for each stretch he walked. Roadside banana groves and mango trees became his short-term destinations. Second, he had to get smart, learn to read the room, and know when to do what. For example, he noticed Japanese guards rarely bullied healthy-looking prisoners, so he decided to walk tall to appear more spirited. After 6 days of the death march, the original 70,000-plus prisoners dwindled to over 60,000. 1/5 died on the way. Tenny and the remaining prisoners reached the O'Donnell POW camp in central Luzon, entering the second stage of his hellish journey. Struggling to survive. The O'Donnell camp was built in dense jungle, long abandoned and overgrown with weeds. Snakes, insects, rats, and ants roamed freely. The camp's shacks were dilapidated, many without roofs, others with rotting supports ready to collapse. These crumbling shacks became the prisoners' living quarters. Japanese guards divided prisoners into work groups for daily tasks like collecting water and firewood for cooking, or medicinal herbs for treatment. With over 200 prisoners dying daily from disease, Tenny was assigned to the burial detail. The dead were buried naked, because the living desperately needed their clothes. Often, groundwater would make corpses float in graves. Burial workers had to hold bodies down with bamboo poles, while others shoveled dirt until covered. After each burial, participants held brief mourning rites. Tenny refused to be consumed by death. His sole purpose was surviving to return home. So on his 7th day at O'Donnell, Tenny escaped. The Japanese hadn't yet numbered prisoners, so escapes went unnoticed without collective punishment for others. Soon after arriving, Tenny joined a water-carrying squad due to his strength. 3 days later, while returning with water, he seized a chance to flee and unexpectedly met local guerrillas. These guerrillas were mostly Americans separated during Bataan fighting, or those who refused to surrender after the fall. Hiding in jungles with pro-American Filipino help, they waged guerrilla warfare against Japan, seizing supplies and disrupting Japanese war plans, prompting anti-guerrilla sweeps. Japan posted bounty notices in villages. Reporting guerrillas or their activities earned a sack of rice. More often, they tortured and killed innocent villagers to extract guerrilla locations. After 2 weeks with guerrillas, a Filipino child betrayed Tenny to Japanese troops. After capture, Tenny endured 3 days of severe torture. Japanese smashed rifle butts into his face, beat his back with bamboo poles, and drove splinters under his fingernails and into his genitals. But Tenny knew that only by firmly denying any link to the guerrillas could he survive and get home. The thought of seeing his wife and family was the very belief that got him through the Japanese torture. He made up a believable identity, claiming to be a missing tank soldier from the Lingayen Gulf battle who got separated and hid in villages and jungles across the Philippines. To make it more convincing, he described lots of war details and a long list of Filipino places he dodged through. He said he knew nothing about guerrillas. He just passed through a village and crashed for a night. The Japanese didn't buy Tenny's story at all. They took him to the parade ground. There, another American was being waterboarded. He begged for mercy, saying he'd spill everything. The Japanese pulled out a pistol without hesitation and shot him dead. Tenny realized that confession for leniency didn't work. Denying everything might give him a sliver of hope. Over days, Tenny brushed with death repeatedly. The Japanese didn't fully believe him, but Tenny was strong and a laborer they needed badly. Once healed, the tough Tenny joined the Japanese labor squad to collect scrap metal. By then, the Japanese had numbered the POWs. Escape meant collective punishment. Anyone daring to flee. The 5 men before and after his number would be executed. Tenny knew escape was slim, but for survival, he'd do anything and learn anything. The most crucial thing he did was learn Japanese Tenny. While in the labor squad, on a hunt for water buffalo, scrap metal hauling was grueling work. Most POWs had malaria, weak and malnourished, so the Japanese commander let POWs hunt 2 wild water buffalo to boost strength, but they bagged 1 extra. Tenny thought it was no big deal, but the Japanese commander got furious, accusing Tenny of disobeying orders and ranting angrily. Tenny didn't understand Japanese, so he copied soldiers being scolded, bowed head, saying hi over and over, but got worse beatings and torture, his mind fading. Suddenly, a Japanese guard whispered in English to Tenny, "Just hold on 5 more minutes, and you can go back." Tenny gritted it out through the last 300 seconds, realizing that not knowing Japanese had caused endless misery for him and his buddies. So he resolved to learn Japanese. He found the Japanese guard who had secretly helped him before and expressed his desire to learn Japanese. Well, that guard, happily in English, said to him, "You're all brave, good men. Don't worry, I'll teach you." Tenny started learning from the labor tools he was using. Within days, he learned the Japanese names for practical tools. When Japanese soldiers ordered him to fetch a tool, he no longer needed frantic gesturing and shouting. Over the next 3 years as a POW, though Tenny spoke broken Japanese with many grammar mistakes, he was never punished again for not understanding guards. After 3 months in the labor squad, Tenny was transferred to Cabanatuan Camp, eastward, an intensified version of O'Donnell, with more prisoners, more sick inmates, and harder labor. The Japanese guards there were even more brutal. After suffering at Cabanatuan in September 1942, Tenny and 499 other POWs were selected by the Japanese and shipped to Japan via cargo vessel. To compensate for domestic labor shortages, Japan massively conscripted POWs as free slave laborers. In 1942 alone, Japan dispatched 54 ships transporting nearly 50,000 prisoners of war to factories, docks, and mines of Japanese industrial giants as slave labor. These giants included Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Showa Denko, Nippon Steel, and Kawasaki Heavy Industries. After 28 days of inhumane sea voyage, Tenny arrived in Japan and was assigned with nearly 500 POWs to Camp 17 near Omuta coal mine. From 1944 to 1945, Camp 17 received about 1,250 additional POWs successively. When reaching Japan, Tenny weighed only 50 kilograms, 40% less than before the war. Omuta coal mine was also called 3 Feet Coal Mine. Opened in 1917 by Japan's Mitsui Company in Umuta City, Fukuoka Prefecture, it was Japan's largest coal mine then, with 9 tunnels extending over 200 meters underground. The 1923 Great Kanto earthquake damaged Omuta's rock formations. Mitsui Company was forced to close some deep-level mines and tunnels. During 182, facing intense war production demands, these dangerous mines closed for 2 years were reopened. Mitsui Zaibatsu forcibly conscripted many Allied POWs and abducted young laborers from China, Korea, and elsewhere to Japan as slave labor. Here, Tenny's hellish journey entered its final stage, enduring silently and strategizing. Japanese soldiers divided POWs into 3 teams. One for exploration, finding new veins in hard rock. The second team handled construction, roof support, building walls or pillars to bear the ceiling's weight in mines. The third team mined coal, blasting and digging at the coal face. Since Omuta's coal had been depleted years before, Tenny's task was mining coal from the very pillars supporting the mine roof, like finding needles in haystacks. This work was extremely dangerous. Explosions and cave-ins were frequent. Many POWs were buried alive, others crushed by falling rocks, left disabled. But no matter how severe the accident, work continued as long as the mine operated. They also faced random beatings from overseers. Tenny vowed silently, no matter how they tortured him or stripped his dignity, he'd survive. He resolved to maintain daily mental focus, observing surroundings to distract from endless labor and free his mind. He also decided not to wait passively for death, but to fight for a sliver of agency. Tenny began using his broken Japanese to negotiate with guards. Once, when POWs needed to lift large stones for support pillars underground, they were too weak to move the heavy rocks. A Japanese overseer mocked, "Look at you Americans! A rock two can't lift! 1 Japanese handles easily!" Though furious, Tenny fluttered, "Please show us how your excellency does it." The honorific Your Excellency pleased the overseer so much that he lifted a large stone onto a pillar for them. Another overseer lifted an even bigger stone. Tenny's group applauded, bowed, and shook hands enthusiastically. Flattered, the overseers actually started helping build pillars. Another time, noticing a new officer was unfamiliar with mining, Tenny bargained in Japanese and got the daily quota reduced. Japanese even helped Tenny befriend Japanese people. Sato, a Japanese civilian working with Tenny, loved plants. His biggest dream was immigrating to America after the war to become a gardener at San Francisco State Park. Sato asked Tenny to teach him English names for plants and flowers. Unlike other Japanese overseers, Sato was polite to POWs, sympathized with their plight. Whenever Sato came to talk with Tenny, the whole group got to rest and work less. Sato always brought gifts when learning English: candy, canned fish, cigarettes. When Tenny was sick, Sato even gave him condensed milk he'd saved for himself. This period became a cherished memory during Tenny's hardship in Omuta. At Omuta Mine, POWs were forced to work 12 hours daily. The monotonous, repetitive labor left prisoners physically drained.
To avoid work, some feigned illness or hired bone breakers to snap bones and fake injuries for rest.
Deliberate injury was risky. More often, POWs had to work obediently. But Tenny used his Japanese skills to build an underground trading network with guards and miners. Japanese traded cigarettes for POWs' toothpaste and shoes. These goods came mostly from Japanese POWs who'd received Red Cross packages. Less disliked by Japanese than Westerners, they'd hidden toothpaste, brushes, even canned coffee. Tenny's first deal, getting an unopened American toothpaste tube for an overseer. Japanese POWs charged 10 cigarette packs. Tenny sold it for 20. The difference was his profit. Soon, more Japanese miners and guards traded cigarettes for American shoes, watches, and Western goods. Tenny hid traded cigarettes taped to his inner thighs with fuse wire, evading Japanese searches. In the POW camp, cigarettes were the main currency, partly from underground trading. On the other hand, the Japanese regularly handed out cigarettes to POWs, 1 pack each, and they traded them for rice. The rice came from kitchen leftovers each day. Plus, Japanese guards and miners had extra rice too. Underground trading was super risky. Get caught, and you're executed. All POWs got searched when entering or leaving camp. But since Japanese guards and soldiers were in on it, they treated searches as routine and half-hearted, giving the underground network room to grow.
As trading took off, futures trading popped up among the POWs.
Many POWs prepaid cigarettes for rice options. These could be cashed in any time or passed to others. But the exchange rate between rice and cigarettes swung with the daily supply of smokes. On handout days, cigarette supply was high, so one bowl of rice could swap for 10 cigarettes. Over time, most cigarettes got smoked up. Cigarette numbers dropped daily, so one bowl of rice only fetched one cigarette. With big rate swings, some POWs made enough food by playing the exchange difference, but others borrowed cigarettes to speculate on rice futures, risking default from rate changes. For instance, a POW borrowed 5 cigarettes for a bowl of rice, hoping to swap it back for 10 when supply was high, netting 5 extra. But if more folks sold rice, one bowl might only get 1 cigarette, then he owed 4, so he'd hand over his daily ration to creditors and hit the mine hungry. To tackle this, Tenney discussed with Major Memoirs, a fellow prisoner of war, and set up a bankruptcy protection system for insolvent prisoner of war. They posted notices in each barrack regularly, listing bankrupt POWs' names and numbers, then arranged creditor-debtor talks to confirm debts. Creditors had to ensure bankrupt debtors got daily rations and couldn't use force to collect, while debtors repaid with future cigarettes till debts were cleared. Long-term POW life brought out the darkness in some prisoners' hearts. Back at O'Donnell, some became agents for Japanese guards, using their authority to punish fellow POWs for easier treatment. Many officers also became Japanese spies among the prisoners.
At Camp 17, a Navy major reported 7 American POWs, leading to 3 executions and 4 torture sessions.
Tenney, though he'd do things to improve his situation, he'd never harm fellow POWs for it. Others also held on to their morals in adversity, like Major Memoirs, a man of high character who quietly helped POWs recognized as their leader. But before the Japanese, he had no voice and couldn't stop the abuse and slaughter. Dr. Hewlett, however, used his medical skills to negotiate with commanders for medicine and rest time, faithfully delivering value, exploring great books worldwide. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're diving into a book called Alive, Homecoming. The subtitle is A Personal Account of the Bataan Death March. Bataan Peninsula is located in the southwest of Luzon Island in the Philippines. During World War II, Japan attacked the Philippines to win in the Pacific. U.S. Filipino forces fought hard for 3 months from Bataan, but surrendered when cut off, letting Japan take over. Then, to move forward with their plans, Japan had to relocate surrendered troops and civilians fast, sparking the infamous Bataan Death March. On April 7, 1942, over 70,000 American and Filipino prisoner of wars forced by the Japanese to march 120 kilometers to a camp. They faced blazing sun, extreme heat, no food or water, plus abuse and killings. In that 6-day death march, about 15,000 people died on the way. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East grouped it with the Nanjing Massacre and Burma-Thailand Death Railway as Japan's top 3 war atrocities. The book's author, Lester Tenney, witnessed this horror firsthand. Tenney was an American soldier in the Philippines defense. After capture, he survived the Bataan Death March, was shuffled through multiple POW camps in the Philippines, and ended up in Omuta, Fukuoka Prefecture, Japan. He labored as a slave in a coal mine. Over 3 years and 8 months of brutal captivity, he endured inhuman treatment and saw savage killings. But the suffering didn't break him. Using his guts and smarts, he fought to survive that hell, and Tenney made it out of the camp alive. With sheer will, he overcame the war's shadow, got a PhD from Arizona State University, and became their finance professor. He spent 50 years using diaries he secretly wrote in camp and gathering raw materials from comrades to finish this 300,000-word account of his POW life. The book traces his journey step by step, From Batan's fall in the Philippines fight to his time in POW camps, it tells America and the world about Japan's brutal war crimes during that time, breaking international laws. Published in 1995, the book sparked a huge reaction in American society. Kirkus Reviews, an authoritative American book review magazine, believes that Tenney tells the legend of a hero miraculously surviving hell. American historian Stephen Ambrose praised it as an outstanding work where virtue triumphs over evil, and the great humanity shown in adversity is worth savoring. Next, I'll guide you through Tenney's hellish journey in 3 stages, experiencing his suffering and resilience firsthand. And Stage 1, historical and intense. Stage 1, the fall of Bataan and the death march. At 3 a.m. on December 8, 1941, Manila time, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, igniting the Pacific War. 9 hours later, Japan bombed the Philippines, destroying U.S. air bases there. The Philippines was a strategic hub in the Southwest Pacific and a U.S. colony. After World War II began, the U.S. froze Japanese assets and embargoed oil. To secure resources, Japan aimed to occupy mineral-rich colonies like the Philippines. In late December that year, Lieutenant General Masaharu Homma, commander of the Philippine campaign, ordered Japanese troops to land at Lingayen Gulf on Luzon's west coast, planning to conquer the Philippines in 50 days. Because the U.S. had planned to focus its main forces in Europe and stay defensive in the Philippines. Since Japan's attack began, the U.S. Filipino forces had been making tactical retreats. By mid-January 1942, the Allied forces retreated to the Bataan Peninsula, engaging in a 3-month standoff with the Japanese. Bataan Peninsula had rugged terrain with steep canyons, hills, and mountains. Humid, sweltering, thick with vegetation, crawling with venomous insects, and malaria spread through the troops by late March. In the U.S. Filipino forces, 1,000 men fell daily from malaria.
Rationed food and canned meat were long gone, so soldiers had to forage locally.